The day Diana's money stopped moving was the day the royal family stopped pretending everything was fine. No shouting, no public fight, no dramatic balcony scene. Just a quiet legal switch buried inside a trust, flipped without warning, and suddenly Prince Harry's inheritance was frozen solid. And the reason? Not scandal, not revenge, not headlines. According to Palace Whispers, it was something far colder. A clause, written by Diana, activated by William, and connected to Meghan.
Lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother. Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
Behind palace walls, one sharp decision flipped the entire royal mood overnight. What started as quiet money chatter suddenly turned serious for Prince Harry, and insiders say nobody inside the palace was ready for how fast it escalated. A move tied to Meghan reportedly pushed officials to pull the brakes, forcing Prince William to step in and lock things down with zero hesitation. This wasn't tabloid noise or messy rumors. Palace sources stress this was a clean legal call made to protect Princess Diana's estate exactly as it was designed. No drama, no emotions, just rules snapping into place.
Is it like strategy time, or was it just like another day where we're going to figure it out, not an emergency situation?
It was very much, we all knew about it because we all read the papers, and
oh my gosh, how crazy. How crazy that you guys
know.
are back there reading them, and you know that like they're on the other side reading the same thing.
Yeah, well, not only on the other side, you have William and Harry come down in the kitchen in the morning, and you're thinking, oh, okay, you might want to read the paper. It was like that. That was the situation.
A rarely used clause hidden deep in the trust was activated. And once that happened, everything stopped cold. Everything stopped cold. Before sunrise on January 17th, 2026, while the world slept and California was still wrapped in Montecito calm, senior fears inside Clarence House quietly signed off on something that had never been done before. They froze all trust distributions linked to the Duke of Sussex. No leaks, no announcements, just paperwork and a legacy put on ice. This wasn't palace gossip spiraling out of control. This was legal machinery grinding into motion after decades of silence. Deep inside Princess Diana's trust sat a safeguard rarely discussed, never used, and designed for one purpose only.
I cannot imagine Harry hopping downstairs looking for his glass of morning OJ and you having to be like, that pep in your step. There's a, you know, it's about to expire once you see the papers today.
Pause everything if uncertainty enters the picture. And suddenly, uncertainty had entered the picture. Insiders say recent developments tied to Meghan raised legal questions the trust could not ignore. Not rumors, not blogs, definitions. Eligibility, conditions written in ink before Harry was even a teenager. The palace didn't have flexibility. The clause didn't allow for feelings. Once triggered, it didn't care about love stories, interviews, documentaries, or public sympathy. It cared about clarity. And until clarity existed, the money could not move. The vault is locked. The legacy is guarded, and the tension inside royal walls has never felt louder. How will the Duke react, and what truth might finally step out of the shadows? Prince Harry's inheritance from his mother has been blocked, and the reason isn't emotion or payback.
So we were with them when they would discover these stories, basically. But also, in fairness, if it was a big story, they'd be notified probably the night before. You know, the press teams would let them know. And then obviously there would have to be a discussion with, you know, the father about whatever that story may be and how to go forward. But the king, I think, and I was never in the room when these conversations took place because that really was a private conversation. But the king was, I think, of the belief that they were young and they're going to make silly mistakes. And you learn from those mistakes. It's as simple as that, I think.
Despite online noise, palace insiders say this move has nothing to do with punishment or family tension. The freeze wasn't personal. It was procedural, sharp, and rooted in old legal groundwork that had been sitting untouched for decades. At the center of this move is a quiet legal mechanism known as Clause 3, buried deep inside Princess Diana's sealed trust. This clause was never designed to judge behavior, manage headlines, or stir controversy. Its focus is far more basic and far more serious legal clarity. Clause 3. A backup plan, an emergency brake. Diana's insurance policy against the unknown. For years, it was treated like a legal ghost. technically real, but unlikely to ever appear. Palace lawyers filed it away as maternal caution. Something thoughtful, something protective, something they assumed would never be needed. Until William made the call to use it. By activating Clause 3, William wasn't accusing, he wasn't condemning, he wasn't choosing sides in a family feud. He was doing something colder, he was choosing structure over sentiment. Because Clause 3 doesn't ask who's right. It asks one thing only. Are all required conditions fully verified? If the answer is anything less than a perfect yes, the inheritance locks. By triggering the clause.
And then I'd then go through and see him off, knowing he's off to go and do this thing that I've just watched in the news. And then you'd go and watch it later on, you'd see him doing what he's doing, and in the evening you would come back. So it was living in the most extraordinary world. Very extraordinary, but great fun. And I remember being at Clarence House, looking out one morning and saw the cars, all the preset riders and everything, as they all drive off, and you see this big entourage.
William turned a private safeguard into enforceable action. Trust doesn't accuse, speculate, or assign blame. It simply pauses everything. Funds stop moving, assumptions stop forming, and the process freezes until clarity is officially established. This freeze is not a punishment, it's a legal standstill. A control pause designed to protect the integrity of the trust exactly as Diana outlined it. And here's where the story gets deeper and far more haunting, because Diana didn't just leave money. She left instructions, warnings, protections written during the most fragile years of her life. Under English law, Diana had enormous power over her estate. She could delay access, attach requirements, and even block distribution entirely if she believed uncertainty could harm her son's futures. She didn't design a gift. She designed a system. A system built to step in if life ever became complicated. She could delay access, attach requirements, or even block distribution entirely if she felt it was necessary. In England and Wales, the law gives wide room for personal judgment, letting a will reflect its creator almost without interference. That freedom looks very different in other regions, but in England and Wales, a will carries the full weight of its maker's intent. Clause 3 came straight from that freedom. Not emotional, not dramatic, deliberate. Diana understood that wealth can protect, or it can destabilize, so she built in a pause button. A legal moment where everything could stop until truth caught up with circumstance. And now, decades later, that pause button has been pressed. Every condition was chosen to protect, not provoke. In the end, Clause 3 wasn't extraordinary at all. It was the natural result of a woman using her legal rights carefully, thoughtfully, and with full awareness of the future she was shaping. But the real chill didn't come from the law. It came from a letter. A handwritten letter Diana wrote in 1996. Not as a princess, not as a public figure, but as a mother with instincts she couldn't ignore. The letter had been preserved quietly for decades, and when it resurfaced during inheritance reviews, everything changed. Because her words didn't talk about enemies. They talked about uncertainty, silence, truth arriving too late. Legal experts later noticed that language from that letter mirrored Clause 3 almost line for line. It wasn't poetry, it was preparation. And now, as Harry's inheritance sits frozen behind palace walls, Diana's foresight no longer feels symbolic. It feels active. It feels present. It feels like a mother's voice echoing through legal machinery, whispering. One message louder than ever: don't move forward until you're sure. And the palace, for once, listened. The freeze didn't explode. It didn't leak in dramatic fashion. It spread quietly, methodically, like frost creeping across glass. Inside palace walls, the word wasn't crisis. It was containment. Because once Clause 3 activated, the situation stopped being emotional and started being procedural. And procedure inside the monarchy is colder than any family argument could ever be. The trust didn't ask whether Harry felt betrayed. It didn't ask whether Meghan felt targeted. It didn't ask who loved who. It asked one thing: are there unresolved questions tied to eligibility, disclosure, and legal clarity? If the answer is yes, even partially, the system freezes. And suddenly conversations that had once been personal became institutional. Lawyers stepped forward where relatives stepped back. Paper trails mattered more than feeling. Dates, records, filings, and formal declarations became the new battlefield. And this is where the whispers turned into something heavier. Because in this narrative, the trigger wasn't scandal. It was documentation. A legal filing, presented quietly, without press or spectacle, landed at exactly the wrong or right moment. It didn't demand money. It didn't ask for status. It didn't seek attention. It asked for verification. That one word changed everything. Verification means the system must stop assuming. It must stop trusting informal understandings. It must recheck the foundations, history, disclosures, records tied to identity and legal standing. And when systems built on tradition are forced to recheck foundations, they don't move fast. They lock down. Inside the palace, senior officials began what insiders called a legacy lockdown. Not dramatic, not loud, but absolute. Financial pathways linked to the Sussex branch paused. Joint charitable associations quietly distanced. Shared initiatives still carrying royal association, reevaluated, slowed, or shelved. No announcements, no confrontations, just doors closing softly one by one. Across the ocean, the ripple felt different, but just as real. In Hollywood, silence started replacing enthusiasm. Meetings that once moved quickly slowed into will circle back. Collaborations shifted from firm timelines to vague possibilities. Projects that relied on momentum suddenly felt cautious. Not canceled, not condemned. Just carefully stepped away from. Influence depends on access. And when access looks uncertain, people step back before they get pulled into something complicated. The contrast was brutal. Inside the monarchy, contentment looked like tradition tightening its grip. In California, it looked like opportunity quietly drifting out of reach. And in the middle of both worlds stood Harry, caught between love, loyalty, legacy, and a legal system his mother built decades ago without knowing the faces involved, only the risks. Then came the moment no one expected to feel so heavy. Harry returned to the UK, not with a camera crew, not with a public statement, not with defiance. He came carrying documents, copies of legal correspondence, records, personal letters, and, most symbolically, the final will of his mother. The same document now holding his inheritance in suspension. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere wasn't hostile. It was historic, because the mechanisms being activated weren't modern PR strategies. They were old royal provisions, rarely used frameworks designed for moments when lineage, inheritance, and institutional clarity intersect in uncomfortable ways. King Charles stepped into the role not of father, but of sovereign. And that difference changed everything. This wasn't about comforting a son. This was about protecting the structure that outlives them both. Dormant review protocols were activated, archival records consulted, legal interpretations double-checked. The monarchy wasn't reacting emotionally, it was slowing time down. And then Diana's voice returned to the center of it all. Her preserved letter, the one written in 1996, was reintroduced not as sentiment, but as context. Her words about uncertainty, silence, and truth surfacing too late stopped sounding reflective and started sounding instructional. She hadn't warned about a person. She had warned about situations where clarity is missing but consequences are permanent. Suddenly, Clause 3 didn't feel like a restriction. It felt like a safeguard she hoped would never be needed, but prepared anyway. That night, the king addressed the nation. No accusations, no names, no drama, just duty. He spoke about stewardship, legacy, and the responsibility to ensure that inheritance, especially one tied to a beloved figure like Diana, followed not emotion, but law. No inheritance without verification. No restoration without certainty. The message wasn't cruel, it wasn't warm either. It was final in tone, even if temporary in outcome. And as palace lights dimmed and the world argued online, one truth settled quietly into place. The monarchy can survive scandal. It can survive headlines. It can survive family rifts. What it cannot survive is uncertainty in its foundation. So the system did what Diana designed it to do. It paused. Not to punish, not to embarrass, but to force truth, whatever that truth may be, to arrive fully, formally, and without shadows. Now everything waits. The inheritance, the investigations, the relationships, the future role Harry might or might not play. Because until the questions stop being questions, Diana's legacy stays locked. And for the first time in years, the loudest force in the royal story isn't emotion, rebellion, or publicity. It's paperwork. And paperwork, inside a monarchy built on centuries of precedent, always wins in the end.